I must report a missing person. Someone who's just vanished. Have you seen this man? He goes by the name of Scott Morrison. He was Prime Minister, and Liberals are now wondering where he went. They want him back. If you see him, give him a call. Now, that Scott Morrison was a Conservative, well, kind of, and brave enough to take on global warming extremists.
This is coal. Don't be afraid. Don't be scared.
The Treasurer knows the rule on crops.
It's coal.
But that Scott Morrison is suddenly gone, been replaced by a fake, and dare I say, a fool. Now, this fake Morrison, and beware of imposters, this fake Morrison was out there today pretending to be the Liberal Prime Minister, but was praising electric cars as a big solution to this global warming crisis that nobody can actually see. Now, this fake Morrison was today promising to give us 50,000 new charging stations for electric cars and more money to integrate them into the power grid. $250 million just plucked from the air. And we know that he was a fake Morrison because, for one, he'd forgotten that the real Morrison had always been against electric cars, was against them not 3 years ago at the last election, when Labor was saying it wanted half the new cars bought in 2030 to be electric.
I don't have a problem with electric vehicles. I just have a problem with governments telling people what to do about what vehicles they should drive and where they can drive them, which is what Bill Shorten's plan was.
No, that wasn't exactly Shorten's policy back then, and I'm pretty sure that Scott Morrison, the real one, was against electric cars. Let's play the tape to see whether he really was against electric cars back then.
And I'll tell you what, it's not going to tow your trailer. It's not going to tow your boat. It's not going to get you out to your favourite camping spot with your family. Bill Shorten wants to end the weekend when it comes to his policy on electric vehicles.
No. See, that was the real Scott Morrison back then. And we know that the one now is the fake Scott Morrison because nobody believes this one. I mean, certainly not Labor.
Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery in politics, and it is correct that I did propose that we put charging stations on the national highways. Australia is in danger of becoming an automotive third world. The rest of the world is now sending to Australia the cars that no one else in the world wants. The rest of the world is moving to electric vehicles. One of the big drawbacks on electric vehicles is people worry there's not enough charging stations on our roads. I get Labor proposed it. Mr Morrison must read my policy book at night time for ideas.
All that crap about ending the weekend, well, today this proves that that was all a lie, all a bald-faced lie by the Prime Minister, and it's not the only one. I think the Australian people are starting to work this bloke out.
No, really, what stupidity this all is. I mean, why on earth would Scott Morrison go out there today promoting the electric cars he once attacked and then pretending he never said exactly what I just showed you? Why would Morrison today reinforce exactly the criticism that he's been getting of being a fake, of being untrustworthy, of not telling the truth, of just being a salesman with no convictions at all? Who's dreaming up the strategy in his office? It's all so crazy. Even the policy that Morrison is now pushing is fake. I mean, electric cars going to save us from global warming? Seriously? What idiot truly believes that? Now, I get the argument, that electric cars, they run on electricity and not on this nasty petrol that pumps out all this global warming gas. But it's not really how it works. Now, for a start, making an electric car with this big battery creates a third more emissions than making a normal car. And that means you have to drive that electric car for quite a while before it saves more emissions than it created. Now, I know, I read it. Melbourne University's Office for Environmental Programs says, don't worry, because crunching the numbers shows that the standard electric vehicle produces less than 50% of the lifetime emissions of an average internal combustion engine. You just got to drive it long enough. And that all sounds okay, I guess, until you read the fine print. Of course, some regions are powered predominantly by coal. They did their figures purely on gas-fired electricity. And if it's by coal instead, that results in electric vehicles just breaking even. in lifetime emissions. Well, excuse me, Mr. Melbourne University science nerd, but Australia is powered predominantly by coal. Coal-fired electricity gives our electric cars most of their power. So these cars are not planet savers here. Now, I know that Morrison today was also talking about cars powered by hydrogen. But which cars? Where? I mean, hydrogen? Let's see first if that expensive and explosive gas makes any sense as fuel for cars. Like I say, this whole thing is a nonsense solution to a nonsense crisis, powered by panic. And that's even before you work out all the other problems, particularly with electric cars. I mean, they cost a lot more, they take time to recharge, and it's going to cost a fortune to create all the recharging stations so that you can drive them, say, Melbourne to Brisbane or Melbourne to Perth without freaking about, will you reach where you need to go in time, let alone go out into the countryside. And then, of course, later we're going to have to find enough electricity for all these new electric cars that are getting hooked into the grid when we're running short of reliable electricity already. So it's no wonder that so far most Australians don't want a bar of electric cars. Just 1 in 14 new cars sold in this country is electric. And it'd be a lot fewer if green governments like Victoria and New South Wales weren't now throwing cash rebates, $3,000 to rich people to help them buy expensive cars to get this fake feeling that they're saving the planet. The whole thing is a con. In fact, it's a get-rich scheme for car makers who love the idea of Australians being made to junk all these old petrol cars, millions of them, to buy new electric ones instead. Oh, money! That's the jackpot for these car makers. And they love even more having the government even pay us to buy them. I mean, you listen to the industry's chief carpetbagger today attacking the Morrison government for not yet offering more handouts and tax breaks like Labor's offering, so people will buy his product.
Some of the things that they won't do are actually just the most important policies necessary, like introducing stringent fuel efficiency standards that are well overdue for Australia and rebates to make electric vehicles cheaper to buy. Without those two things, it's really hard to accelerate our market.
Really, when Henry Ford started building his Model T cars, he didn't need governments to go pay people to buy them instead of a horse. But the electric vehicle makers today, they insist on it. It's to save the planet, of course, the fakers. And among those fakers now, the Prime Minister. I mean, where did the real Scott Morrison go? Was there ever a real one to start with?